going to be sending this information out on our websites so that we want to take this information to the State Workforce Investment Board. We want to take it to the State Longitudinal Data System or LifeTracks Board, and we want to surface it. We want to bring it out and bring it to the surface and let our individual boards work on that so we can direct it into hopefully policy decisions that'll be made. There's been a lot of great information today, and it's been interesting to hear those who have come to visit us and talk about programs they know around the country, which we certainly appreciate them being here, but also to hear about some of the things we're doing here in the state. And so it's a little mixture of both, and that's what we wanted. We'll take that forward, and we'll surface that. We will make sure that it is seen and that we will act on it in order to effectuate solid policy in the area of workforce development.
I'm Kathy Krebs. I'm the Executive Director of the Heldrich Center for Workforce Development from Rutgers University, and I'm going to say this was everybody's idea, because in the short amount of time we basically talked about one key issue that everyone thought was important, which is the breakdown in the value of work in the family, in the community, in various aspects. And so one of the ideas was that Mississippi needs to rebalance itself between the value of trade and technical education and the value of a four-year degree, that they felt there was an imbalance towards college education as defined as a post-secondary four-year degree. But fundamentally, they also felt that to be successful in today's economy, you needed education and training, but you had to have a value in work to want to be education and training, and that there are various aspects of people's lives as they grow up that influences that value of work, and it isn't just one person's job. And in fact, in many instances, there's a breakdown in whose job is it. Is it the parent's job to instill a value of an expectation of work? Yes. Is it a teacher's job? They may not think so, but yes, indeed. So there's various influencers. There's the community values about encouraging work. And so trying to rebalance it to get at that population who are not participating in the labor market, who are dropping out and don't see the value or future of an education or training because they don't really see a life for them of work. And so a lot of the discussion was about that rebalancing, which would help to Kathy, rebalance getting people back in the labor market.
Who must be involved in this effort, and what resources are needed?
Well, I can't say we got to the resource issue, but who needs to be involved in it was really, I would say, as someone said, a community problem. It really needs to, and there was a lot of discussion about messaging from the top, messaging from policymakers about we want you to work. We want you to work, we want you to be successful, and so therefore it's important. And it doesn't mean success doesn't mean a four-year degree. Success means you're working in the community. And so I think that everyone felt it was a community issue.
Okay. Our idea we're presenting is really, we feel some components already exist, but we think that an online consolidated state marketplace for our workforce, we know that Georgia and Louisiana maybe have had some pushes towards this with the work-ready communities, but to actually have a brand. The term Mississippi Works has been out for some other programs, but to have an actual brand, a marketing wing, and a full integration of what's capable with LifeTracks already in with wings to where you would have almost a registry of credentials to include all CRCs, non-credit, industry, military, degree programs, and also that links with a person's ability to build a profile and actually match up with jobs.
My name is David Stevens, and I'm own Stevens Printing, and I'm with the NFIB. Part of our discussion surrounded the chronic poor coming out of prison and how the fact that the United States is first in the nation, first in the world with incarceration, and Mississippi is second in the nation with incarceration, and how these figures are going to play out with the employment in the future. And the real, question would be as to what leads to felonies, how that the workforce reinvestment dollars can be reallocated in order to have a more positive effect in the prison programs. And, I guess that this would all tie back into the legislature, and there is a program or a group that's coming together now of legislators to discuss this particular scenario. And so as far as what resources are needed, I think that we've got good resources going into it now. It's just to have a better measurement of those resources and how they're being played out in the prison population, whether or not the programs that are being offered in the prison systems are actually offering the inmates, employability in the future. And that's about it.
We talked about job creation, and in job creation, what we talked about was a greater emphasis on entrepreneurship. We know that numbers of jobs are created by startup organizations. One of the things that we found was, as we were discussing this, is there are a lot of entrepreneurship opportunities out there, but they're not really aligned. The Department of Education has got some entrepreneurship classes. Community colleges have some entrepreneurship classes. There are institutions like Southern Mississippi that have emphasis on entrepreneurship. There are organizations like Innovate Mississippi that work with entrepreneurship. But there's really not an alignment with these organizations. So first of all, we need to bring these groups together, make sure everybody understood what resources were already available. Then also we talked about the need for support groups, because you just can't say, take a class in entrepreneurship, go out and make it happen. So there would need to be resources to support these entrepreneurs. And then another piece that we would see is a need for really a pot of money for an angel fund or an incubator or additional funds that would help these people start these entrepreneurship organizations, these businesses, and then the support that would lead to them becoming proficient. Because what we find is, as groups create these organizations, people move up and they move out, and so jobs are created, jobs churn, and then you need the next group of entrepreneurs to come along and create that process all over again. So first of all, alignment, and then some angel funds to set these people up, and then the support to make sure that they're successful.
First is, we think we need a branding program. We need a public relations effort, concerted effort to make young people and parents understand that technical jobs are good and desirable and respectable, and you can make a good living that way for your family and contribute to the community. We need to explain that to the people of Mississippi. Secondly, we need a dropout recovery program. We have more than 500,000 adults in Mississippi who don't have a high school diploma or a GED, and we need to combine academic skills, GED prep for those folks, along with job skills at the same time. While they're learning how to do English and reading and math, they're also learning how to be a welder, a plumber, or a truck driver, and they need wraparound services while that's happening, whether it may be child care, gasoline to go to class, support. In terms of who would need to be involved in that, it would need to be the community colleges, the Department of Education, the business community, the governor's office, and the legislature. I certainly applaud Governor Bryant for having this conference to bring all the folks together who are interested in workforce development and economic development in our state. But again, training is the foundation. If our folks don't have the skills, then we can't get the jobs, we can't attract the industry. So training is the foundation, and community colleges are all about workforce training and getting our folks ready for 21st century jobs.
My name's Johnny Gonzalez. I'm with the Women in Construction program in Biloxi, Mississippi. Our idea was to create a consortium of sorts made up of community organizations, community colleges, private industry, to start introducing non-traditional occupations as more of a front-running or viable option for grade-age children, I guess, eighth grade and up. I'm sorry, I lost myself. While continuing to address training needs for current job seekers and kind of introducing the positions as what they are now and not what they used to be, not as grungy and dirty, but more of a viable option, as I said. And the people that would need to be part of the conversation are community organizations, community leaders at both the city level as well as the state, I think.
Resume writing and feed them into different pathways for work and even into the career technical or university. Who must be involved would be our community colleges, workforce development centers, business and industry. We would need teachers to be able to teach these classes throughout the days, course money, software programs, things like that to be able to get the academy going on an all-day, daily basis.
there are three things I think that we're able to come up in terms of consensus. Number one, when it comes to policy, this table would like to see more a unified educational system. Instead of thinking about educational sectors, we need to create a policy that allows us to talk about education, not as a unified educational system, but as a unified kind of debate and discussion about educations. Instead of talking about early childhood and K-12 and higher educations, to move toward more kind of a policy that will allow us to integrate and align, pre-K all the way through basically workforce. The second, please correct me if I say, the second thing that we talked about is, we have somebody from the state audit office. We would like to see as a program in the state that we're already accountable. We're very much accountable for everything we do, and move from procurement, compliance accountability versus more kind of making leadership and people in positions of leadership accountable for their decision. How you make your decisions, what information you use to make your decisions. So, and create a system that will allow us to have relevant outcomes that will lead to bigger goals like economic development or, improvement of quality of life. So that was another thing in terms of program. Should I? That was an interesting discussion, and we of course everybody should be involved, and from the top down. But what we were talking about more than anything else is to restore, or at least to improve our sense of civic engagement in the community. So it was pretty much kind of a grassroots type of approach, and create a sense of responsibility in the community. So the very people in the community should be the first one involved, and then basically move up to the ladder. So. The focus was on understanding the workforce needs of today's economy in Mississippi. So we addressed several points. Number one, when we think about workforce needs, we always focus more on job skills, educations, but one of the things we have to do in the state is also to change the culture, the image, in terms of encourage our people to embrace what are the new needs of our economy. So it's also, this idea that people should be more encouraged and engage in this new kind of workforce needs that the economy is, imposing on us, so to speak.
Tell us, what would you like to see happen in order to enhance? What needs to happen to enhance workforce development in Mississippi?
Well, workforce development is a very complex issue that requires, number one, basically to bring the educational sector and all the workforce sectors together. So we have to basically consider now workforce development from early childhood all the way through graduate school and to the workforce. So that requires to lining up our programs across pretty much the workforce as well as the education sector. Number two, we have to basically have a better partnership with the business community in order to understand what are the critical needs of our economy to meet the jobs, the demand of the jobs of the future. So, and third, we have to basically promote an economy that, can take our investment in our own community, that stay in our community. We can have all this investment in workforce and education, but if we don't have the right jobs for our people to stay in the state, then we'll be basically empty investment.
What we realized is that sometimes our technical programs offered at the community colleges don't exactly meet the needs of our industries, and so we think that maybe a great opportunity would be to have industry to work with the community colleges to help ensure that the technical programs that are being offered are in line with what our employers need, and also to maybe streamline the technical training to match up with some of the workforce training that's currently being done, so there wouldn't have to be as much retraining. We think that this could be done by working with the community college system, the individual community colleges, and industry leaders in order to make sure that our technical training is meeting the needs of our current workforce demands. Obviously, this is going to take some additional funding through the legislature, but we do think that this would be a great way to move our industry forward.
The focus of our panel discussion was the educational sector and how it relates to workforce development.
What needs to be done in order to enhance workforce development in Mississippi?
I think the biggest thing we need to do to enhance workforce development in Mississippi is greater partnerships that try to address specific issues and strategies to solve specific problems.
Are you encouraged by what you've seen or heard here today?
I'm always encouraged in Mississippi. In Mississippi right now, we have a lot of innovation in workforce development, a lot of cooperation, a lot of administrative support, and so I see good things for the future of Mississippi.
The focus of our panel was on the role of employers, or the demand side, in workforce development.
What needs to be done to get more employers engaged in the workforce development efforts in Mississippi?
Well, I think we have to show the value to employers of doing this kind of work and the kind of bottom line payoff it makes for their businesses. Otherwise, they may be engaged on a charitable basis, but they're not going to be able to sustain their engagement. So that means strong partnerships that really produce value for those workers and their employers.
Are you encouraged by what you've seen or heard here today?
You bet. I think that there's a lot of good examples of employers who are doing this kind of work, and there's a lot of good examples of programs who are engaging employers in really good ways to get the work done.
I'm not from around here, as I say everybody else. I'm a passionate Mississippian, and I can say this: Mississippi is on a path to greatness, and I believe that if we can send this message outside the state, that we as a Mississippian can believe that we can actually do great things, I think we are really on a great path for the next few decades.
I think it's a worthwhile conference, and I think it's important that we all get in a room and talk about how we can work together to help move Mississippi forward.
That was really fantastic. Just think that those were 10 very powerful ideas, but 10 times 10, we're going to leave this room today with at least 100 very powerful ideas that we will definitely share with you.
I think probably the most important part of the conference was what just occurred, where we got the input from you. And as Todd said, all of the information that was turned in, we're going to go back and get persons to really lay it out where it's clear and something that you can use, and then information will be sent to you as to where you can go and get the ideas that were generated here today. So our role was to bring you persons to get you thinking, but to us, what we really wanted to do was the last hour's worth of work. And I think just based upon the report outs that we had just now, that was a success for us.
Well, thank you very much. I first want to thank all of you. It's hard to get people who are as busy as you are to spend an entire day, and you've done that, and I really appreciate it. And you've stayed alert and attentive after that big, heavy lunch we gave you, so thank you for that. I wanted to add my thank yous as well. First of all, to all of you, because without you, we wouldn't have had the kind of productive day that we've had here today, and so I appreciate you being here. I want to thank also the sponsors. And I particularly want to thank the Federal Reserve Board. Todd Green and I have known each other for a long time, and I mentioned this last night at the reception, that it was Todd that came to me and said, we'd like to do something in Mississippi. What about we come in there and work with you on a workforce development initiative? And I jumped at the chance and talked to the governor, and he was very receptive to it. And so this is how we've gotten to where we are today. So I really want to thank Todd for his leadership, but also to thank all of the Federal Reserve representatives who have been here today. I also want to thank all the speakers. As was just mentioned, the speakers have added so much to this dialogue today, and I've learned a lot just from listening to them. And I always learn a lot, not only from speakers from around the country, but also here in the state, because we do have a good story to tell, and it's worth telling it over and over again. And there are new things that are going on, right, Clay? We got all kinds of new things that are happening every day in the state, and we should be very proud about that. You might ask yourself why MMA is involved in this initiative. Well, as I mentioned last night, I'm an old economic developer, and workforce development has always been the #1 issue in economic development and will be for the foreseeable future. And so having good quality workforce, the availability of workforce, the skill levels of workforce is absolutely critical to manufacturing. We will not have the manufacturing renaissance that everybody talks about if we cannot provide the kinds of levels of skills that are going to be necessary for the jobs of the 21st century in manufacturing. But this is not manufacturing centric. Certainly there are other great jobs that are developing out there in the healthcare field, in the services area, and a variety of other areas that are spinning out as we heard from representatives from the healthcare industry today. So that's one of the reasons why we're so involved in it. But in addition to that, the governor asked me to chair the State Workforce Investment Board, and along with that came the State Longitudinal Data System, or the LifeTracks program. And so I have been involved, and we have many members of the board of both the SWIB and the LifeTracks boards are in this room and have been here today, and I thank them for their service. And we've got a lot of things that we're going to be looking at, a lot of things that they are looking at in their individual capacities, but then collectively we'll be looking at, and taking this information, we'll do a deeper dive on a lot of your suggestions and ideas as we go forward. As the chair of the two individual committees, I had a couple of goals, and I wrote those down yesterday, and it's kind of interesting when I heard all the recommendations today to focus on a couple of those. One of my goals was the dropout rate. If we don't do something about the dropout rate, it's not unique to this state, but if we don't do something about the dropout rate, we only have 3 million people in this state. We cannot afford to have 37% of the population without a high school degree. We simply can't sustain that. And you add a few other factors in there like drug and alcohol problems, and we are reducing the availability of the workforce in the state pretty dramatically. That's an issue that we have to look at on a continuous basis. Again, it's not unique to Mississippi, but certainly we have our challenges as well. The other is an area that's pretty near and dear to my heart, which is career awareness. We have got to do a better job of reaching down into those who are in the 4th and the 5th and the 6th grade, who are actually already beginning to decide what they want to do in their lives, and get them before they get to the 9th grade, because Dr. Clark knows this, by the 9th grade, we start seeing people drop out of the system because they see no reason to stay in the system. We've got to be able to reach out and give the tools to our teachers and our parents and our guidance counselors to give them something that they can work with these young men and women and point them toward great careers in the healthcare field or whatever it might be. So that's another area. Resource utilization. We talked about that today. We will never have enough resources. We have got to use our best efforts to be smart about how we use our resources and to focus them in the best way we possibly can. If there's one thing that I heard today, and as we went around in the tables, it's going to depend upon a joint effort by the public sector and the private sector to make this work, okay? And what is the issue for the private sector whenever they're looking at something? It's the value proposition. What is the value proposition? I run a membership organization. Why does somebody want to be a member of MMA? Hopefully because the value proposition says you get some benefit from it. We've got to show the benefit of the private sector working with the public sector because there are outcomes that are favorable to both. And that's where we've got to work on that area. We have to focus on outcomes. We've got to really focus on making sure that we have a continuous loop, that as we do training, we track the training, we track those who have gone through the training, and then we go out into the work world where they get a job and make sure that that training is resonating with those individuals who are the employers. And if it's not, for one reason or another, then we go back and we fix it. So it's a continuous loop that we have to look at as we go forward. And finally, the issue that I just mentioned, we have got to have the public and private sector together. If we take all of these points and we work on them collectively, we can drive effective public policy in order to take scarce resources, do the best we can with them, and have the best workforce system in the United States. Other states, as we've heard today, are doing that, are moving forward. We've got some great things that we're doing. We just have to keep the pace up, because unlike other areas in economic development that I'm familiar with, where you build a road or a water tower or whatever it might be, workforce development never stops. It's every day, everywhere, with everybody. And if we all work together, we can make it happen. There's no question in my mind that we can make it happen. So today has been a great day as far as I'm concerned. We've gotten a lot of good things accomplished, a lot of great ideas, and I look forward to working with all of you. And again, can't say enough about the Federal Reserve Board, how they've made this happen, and I thank them so much. I wish everybody a safe travel back to your homes. Thank you. We'll be back in touch. And I wanted to mention one thing. As I said before, we're taping this. What we're going to do is we're going to have an entire compressed version of the entire day, and then we're going to break out each of the sessions individually. We're going to have that on YouTube. We'll have it also, and we'll send the links to everybody. So if you want to look at one particular segment that we had, you can go into that, or you can look at the entire thing. So we'll make that available, plus a written report that we'll have. So we're going to get this information out because we think it's so valuable, and the great ideas that you had, we really want to circulate that. So again, thank you. We'll be back in touch. There'll be a survey, and we're going to continue to look to you for the great ideas that you've presented with us today. Thank you so much.
We've seen a tremendous response here in Mississippi. In fact, we do know that the people in Mississippi have indicated that they want more information, they want more data, more research, and more evidence-based practices. So bringing together a conference like this and hearing all the speakers as well as the reaction of the audience, both from Mississippi as well as others, it's been really eye-opening.
What potential for economic development do you see in Mississippi?
Well, economic development now, that discussion is almost entirely centered on workforce development. So having the proper workforce, the governor spoke earlier today about the need to have a workforce in order to recruit the types of companies that are needed here. We heard about Mississippi's health, for example, and the fact that health-related issues are going to require a skilled workforce. There are significant changes that are occurring in the healthcare sector. So that's yet another example of jobs that may be available to Mississippians, and we need to make sure that everyone is positioned in order to take advantage of those great opportunities.
Are you encouraged by what you've seen and heard here today?
I'm definitely very encouraged by what I've heard here today, what I've seen. The audience members were very engaged. In fact, we heard a number of ideas that emanated from today's conference about how Mississippi might better plan for its workforce in the future. While I know some ideas will be implemented immediately, we certainly know that others are much more long-term propositions.
We've heard some great ideas that have been generated. Also, we've got some really good input from the representatives who are here today. We're going to take that and use it in different forums around the state to try to improve our programs and ensure that we meet the needs of employers in the private sector in the state.
If people have questions like more information, what should they do?
Well, they can go to our website. It's mma-web.org, and you can get information on this program. Also, we'll be standing up part of the website for the Federal Reserve Board, which we'll publish through our website.